Hey guys, I'm here with CLUYTENS. How are you, Ago?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great, doing great. Thanks for asking.
Earlier in his career, Ago had a great time selling large deals to corporate clients in the Fortune 500 and beyond as part of Ernst & Young and Arthur Andersen. He then held a variety of general management and executive positions at ING in retail banking, insurance, and wealth management. So during that time, he lived and worked in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. He's also lived in other countries and got to understand what things look like from a buyer's perspective. Ago is currently practice director for Europe, Middle East, and North Africa with the Rain Group since 2012. He specializes in B2B sales training, coaching, and consulting for financial, technology, and professional services firms who are looking to grow top-line revenue, lead to deal conversions, and overall deal size. So welcome, Ago.
Matt, it's great to be here, and that's a fantastic intro you did there, by the way.
It's all you. I took it from you. So how did you come about being passionate about B2B sales?
Right. Well, this is a funny story. B2B sales are kind of like Brussels sprouts, right? The first time that you taste them, you're not sure if it's really what you want and if you like it. And so that was very much true in my case. This was not love at first sight. I remember when I came out of college, right, and I went into the big world of management consulting. I thought of myself as a management consultant, as a strategy consultant. I did not think of myself as a salesperson. And in fact, I probably had pretty negative, I guess fairly negative views about the world of sales. And obviously, like anything that you've never done before, the first time you do something and the first couple of times, it's just awkward and weird. And that was definitely true for me. I mean, I was horrible as a salesperson. I can tell you stories. I literally walked into this prospect's office once, CFO, and I walked into the office and I had a projector with me, which I proceeded then to set up and walk him through a bunch of slides. So that was painful. But over time, as you practice, you get better. And the same was true for me. And I remember, when I discovered that I had love for B2B sales and I was passionate about it, was when I closed my first deal. I remember, to this day, I remember closing that first deal. I remember actually being surprised when the client said, yeah, okay, let's move forward. And I was like, what, you're buying from me? And that's when I was hooked. I mean, after that, thing just got better and better and better. And as you know, because we've talked before, when I was in management consulting, I sold and I did project work as well. And then for about 10 years, whilst I was at ING, I did no selling whatsoever. So I did a lot of buying as a manager and executive, I guess you might say. But I did no selling. So when I came out of my corporate job, I thought about, what's next, right? What's the next big thing? What do I want to do moving forward? And I realized that I love selling and I love generating and developing new business. And I also love learning and passing on what I've learned to others. And so at the crossroads of those two, very naturally lies what I do now, which is sales training, coaching, and consulting. That's kind of the backstory to it. And I guess very much like Brussels sprouts, sales was a bit of an acquired taste for me. But once I got the hang of it, once I learned how to perform, how to do it well, that was it. It was just, it was passion.
So I know that you've been creating dozens of educational videos on YouTube on B2B sales and writing for even longer that you've been creating videos. So how would you summarize what you're teaching in those pieces of content?
There's a couple of things I think. I think one is I try to keep these videos simple, right? So I always joke when I say I spent the first, half of my career making simple things really complicated or seem really complicated, big slides, big models, and everything else. And then I vow to spend the second half of my career doing the exact opposite, which is to make really complicated things really simple. So I do little videos that are very, 5 tips to do that, 3 questions to ask, stuff like that. So for me, it's really all about simplicity. In terms of what I guess the 3 messages are, I try to make complicated things really simple, to break it down into their component parts so people can really watch a video and go out and do this stuff. Number 2 is anybody can do this if they're willing to invest the time, effort, focus, energy, a little bit of pain and a little bit of discomfort. But sales is not, you're not born a natural seller. Nobody is, right? And you know, there's very different levels and types of styles of sales. Anyone can succeed at selling, providing they're willing to do so, and they're willing to put in the time and the investment. And then the third thing is, you know, for me, and this is one of my favorite quotes, success is where preparation meets opportunity. And I think that's very much true in the world of sales as well, in the world of, you know, entrepreneurship. If you're willing to put in the preparation, if you're willing to put in the dedication, good things will start happening. And when they do, you'll be in a great position in order to take advantage of them.
What would you say are the top 3 qualities that a salesperson should have?
Right. So for me, I'll give you a few. I think the first one is research-based. The second and third are kind of, you know, more my own experience. So one of the things that sets us apart, I believe, at Ring Group is that we do a lot of research. For a firm our size, we do a ton of research, actually. And the reason we do that is because we truly believe that in order to effectively advise our clients and train our clients and consult with our clients, we need to know what's working in buying and selling today, not 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even longer. And so the first thing I'll say, the first character trait or characteristic of a great salesperson is they need to be a thought leader. They need to be able to educate their prospects with new ideas and perspectives. The research we did on this was about, I think, 18 months ago. And we surveyed 700 senior business-to-business buyers, senior executives, the kinds of people that, you know, most people watching this would be selling to or aspiring to sell to every single day. And we didn't just talk to them or survey them, we also looked at how they allocated their funds and how they actually allocated the money they were spending. And what came out was a list of top 10 factors that buyers say makes them buy from one firm versus another. The number one factor is because the seller educated me with new ideas and perspectives. Buyers are not looking for sellers to be, you know, a hatch through which information passes. They're looking for context. They're looking for opinions. They're looking for new, surprising insights. They're looking for data. So number one for me, be a thought leader. Number two, you need to be business oriented. I just wrote a blog post on this, actually. And one of the points is, you know, as a salesperson, you almost need to get a mini MBA. I'm not suggesting that you go to business school, but what I'm suggesting is, I mean, you can if you want to, I did, but what I'm suggesting is you need to be well-versed and have a broad background in business in general. You need to understand how industries operate. You need to understand certain terms and terminology. You need to be able to think bigger picture with your buyer. You know, I think that's also a key character trait of a great seller and a great salesperson. And the third one is, you have to be able to put your ego in the closet for a moment, especially when you're selling, right? This is not about you. This is not about your quarterly target. This is not about, you know, your next car or your house. This is really about the buyer. It's about helping understand their needs, their afflictions, their hopes, their desires, and taking yourself out of the equation. I find that much like in sports, certain athletes say when they're in the zone, it's like nothing else exists. They're just focused on the moment itself, what's called flow. I find that great sellers have that as well. They're in flow, and when they're in flow, their own agenda is non-existent. You're completely focused on their buyer. They're completely focused on the conversation. They're completely focused on really, really understanding what the other person is looking for. And that's when magic happens. So I think number one, be a thought leader. Number two, be business oriented, have a broad business background, be interesting to talk to, I guess. And number three, live without ego or have no ego.
Well, I love what you're saying right now, and I love that the fact that you're summarizing what you just said, which very few people would do. And you do that in your videos as well. That's one of the things I really like about your videos. It's like you present what you're going to explain, then you explain it, and then you actually tell them what you told them. Who are some of the people that really inspired you? You know, sales geniuses you've learned from.
All right. So for me, there's a few I'll mention here. I could go on for like 10 minutes about this. I'm lucky in the sense that I'm connected to a lot of people who are excellent sales leaders, thought leaders in the sales space. But I'll mention a few. So number one, Barb Jamanka. Barb Jamanka is for me the number one expert in terms of social selling today. And actually she's expanding, she's going broader, she's linking social selling to sales at large and in the larger context. But Barb Jamanka is definitely someone that I admire and that I have a lot of respect for. Number two, Joanne Black. I can think of no bigger authority in the field of referral selling and referrals than her. And it is so crucial, Matt, I can tell you from my own perspective, really becoming more strategic and focused on referrals has transformed my business. Number 3, Jonathan Farrington. He's, first off, he's probably the nicest person you'll ever meet, but also I can think of no one who's thinking further out in terms of, what's going to happen with sales in the future. We're all thinking, next year, next 5 years, maybe. Jonathan's thinking 20, 30 years into the future. So Jonathan Farrington. I think those 3, Barb Jamanko, Joanne Black, Jonathan Farrington, those are people, really I think you should check out.
What would be your top 3 pieces of advice in terms of B2B sales?
Right. So I'm sure you've seen a research recently coming out of Forrester, right? So by 2020, 1 million sales jobs in the US alone will be lost. And I like what they say about buyers are living in 2015. Sellers are still selling like it's 1965. It's clear that buying is changing, and I can't believe that sellers are not catching on to this quicker, right? Buyers have all the information at their fingertips through Google. Once they have that information, they would much rather, like 3/4 of all buyers would much rather buy online when purchasing products, if possible, and go through a salesperson. So for me, 3 pieces of advice. I think number 1, when I talked about, Forrester predicted that 1 million sales jobs would be lost by 2020. There's one category that's an exception. There's one category that's going to grow, and that is those who are truly selling as consultants, who are high-end advisors, who take a trusted advisor type role. And so I would highly encourage you to train yourself in the traditional skill set of a consultant. The ability to think analytically, reason logically, the ability to pull different disparate elements together into a comprehensive whole, the ability to help your client make decisions. Those are all key skill sets that traditionally consultants have had, which I think sellers need. So you need to train yourself on that. You need to educate yourself, possibly retrain yourself if you're if you've been in sales for a while. So that's number 1, retrain yourself to become a consultant. Number 2 is, you really need to stand out as a thought leader. I know I said it before, but it's so important. I'll say it again. And the reason is, if 65 or 67 or 77 or whatever percent it is of the buying cycle now happens online, well, you need to be there. You need to be a part of that conversation. You cannot sit back until the phone rings or until magically you happen to reach out to a buyer and connect. You really need to be out there producing, maybe not producing, because I know that's difficult. Not everybody has the time to, run a YouTube channel, and not everybody should either. But if you're in sales, you should be sharing great content. You should be sharing it through social media. You should stand out as a thought leader. And number 3, the number 3 tip is never look at the first deal. Look at the long term, right? I always say start with the end in mind. I know I copied that from someone else. I wasn't the first one to come up with that, of course, but start with the end in mind. Every single client, every single prospect that you're talking to now, don't think about winning the first deal. Think about where do you want to take that relationship in 3 years' time. I guarantee that's going to transform your sales career, your business. I've got clients now that are coming back to talk about deals where we've worked together 3 years ago, and they're coming back now. And it's such a great way because they already know you, they know the value that you deliver, there's already a relationship in place, which is positive because if not, they wouldn't be reaching out to you. But I find that a lot of sellers and sales managers, for that matter, suffer from like a short-term temporary outlook. It's about this number, this quarter, this month, this week in some cases. And I really encourage you to take a longer perspective. So Matt, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to summarize. Number 1, retrain yourself to become a consultant. Number 2, aspire to be the best at what you do and stand out as a thought leader. And number 3, never just look at the first deal, think long term. One bonus tip I'll give you, I know you said 3, but I can do 4. Educate with new ideas and perspectives. So important. In fact, if you're watching this, I'm sure Matt will put in some contact details. If you're watching this, just reach out to me on social. You can use LinkedIn, Twitter, email, whatever's there. And if you want a copy of the research report, I'd be happy to send you one. So just send me an email or something or a message on social, and I'll get that report out to you. So important.
So thank you so much for your time, Ago.
Matt, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Great series. I'm happy to be a part of it, and I look forward to seeing your next videos.